Top 5 mastering mistakes made by beginners and the steps that you can take to help avoid them in the future. Let's hop right in and get to it. Number 1, not respecting the mix. Mastering is meant to clean up and polish the final mix, not change it into an entirely different piece of audio. Whoever mixed the song, whether that's you or somebody else, worked really hard to get the mix sounding the way that it is. And your job is to provide a second set of ears to correct any small problems that might have gone overlooked in the mixing process, and then to enhance the mix in any way that provides actual value to the final product. So this means making very minute adjustments to the mix, because the reality of the situation is that you don't have access to the individual tracks when you're mastering, so you can't manipulate the vocals by themselves or the instruments or the drums. You're dealing with one single audio file, so every change that you make is going to affect the entire mix as a whole. You don't need to go boosting the top end by 8 decibels or using a stereo imager to drastically spread things out to make the mix more wide. If a song actually needs these things added, then it should go back to the mixing phase where it can be done in a more precise manner. Understand your role as the person who is mastering the song and realize that the song is already 90% done, and your job is just to get it to the finish line. The second mistake that most beginners make is mastering without intention. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, you need to have a reason for everything you do processing wise during mastering. Don't just throw a bunch of plugins on the master channel because you saw somebody else's master chain on YouTube. The truth of the matter is, every single song is different and requires a different approach during mastering. But don't just throw those on every single track with the exact same preset hoping for the best, because that is not mastering. Really ask yourself, does this song need EQ right now? Does it need compression? Challenge yourself to make the master sound as good as possible while using the least amount of processing that you can. Oftentimes, you're going to make things sound worse with the more effects that you add, especially as a beginner. The third mistake is relying on your limiter for loudness. Now, this is probably the most common mistake that I see a lot of beginners making, and it's the hardest to correct. So many people get to the end of their project and just slam their track into a limiter to get it loud, and it's killing the mix. Things are just going to start to distort and sound weak, and the reality is that heavy limiting can really make your song fall apart. It's not the best and most efficient way to get your track loud. Most of the loudness potential of a song is going to come from the mix and not the way that it's mastered. Proper EQ, compression, parallel compression, saturation, clipping, they're all techniques that are going to help set up the mix to have the potential to be loud during mastering. So if you're the one who's doing both the mixing and the mastering and you're struggling to get your track loud, it might be best to go back to the mix instead of waiting till the very end to achieve loudness. I found that 2 to 3 decibels of limiting is the most that I want to do during mastering. If I hit the limiter harder than 2 to 3 decibels, that's when I start to hear the downsides of limiting. Now, you may be wondering, if I only do 2 to 3 decibels of gain reduction, how am I going to get my track loud? If you don't have access to the mix, one thing that I would suggest during mastering is to use clipping to basically chop off the peaks of your song, so that way you give yourself more headroom coming into your final limiter. A clipper is going to bring down your peak level while maintaining the same perceived loudness. In essence, the more headroom that you have, the more you can drive up into that final limiter. And you don't have to go crazy with the clipper. Sometimes only 1 decibel of clipping is enough to get you that much louder. The fourth mistake is not focusing on the small things. Now, I know everybody loves experimenting with adding plugins and effects, trying to get their track loud, but a lot of times the small things can go overlooked. What sample rate and bit depth do we need to export at? Do we need to add dithering? It's easy to forget that a huge part of mastering involves making sure that you have the right file formats for delivery. You have to understand where the song is ultimately going to end up as far as streaming services go, and then export accordingly. The technical details do matter, so make sure you educate yourself properly. The fifth mistake is not listening to your master on multiple sets of speakers. A big part of mastering is ensuring that your song is going to sound good across all playback devices. And if you only listen to the master on one set of speakers, you could be missing a problem that could cause issues on other speakers. So take the time to hear what your master sounds like on devices like iPhones, car speakers, laptops, and even a second set of studio monitors. This is going to help you get a different perspective of the master and allow you to make changes as necessary. All right, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the content. Please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.